colleagues in corporate OD had organized a seminar on organizational diagnosis and design and gave us a lot of really good tools and ideas. But what some of us were looking for was some overarching framework, some way of helping ourselves and our clients understand how all the pieces fit together. And so we had a task force that worked on that, and I was the token American in the group. We had Germans, British, French, we even had an Italian on the group, and we did have somebody from Belgium as well. And we went through all this, and we developed a framework, which is, you see, the latest version is this one here, the organizational systems model. And we were designing it for business managers, not for HR consultants. We said, how do you describe all this stuff to a business manager whose business is not necessarily designing an organization, but who needs to be able to design their organization to do what they need to do? How do you do that? And so that's where this framework came together. With various clients, we have used this as a training program as part of the leadership development curriculum. And the business managers, frankly, have really taken to this in virtually every company that we've done this in. So I just throw that out there as a possibility, because the thing that we wanted to do at P&G was make business managers able to understand. You can't just do a quick fix to solve a problem, and it doesn't take forever to do a real whole systems analysis either. It doesn't need to take forever. And to get them to that point, and once we got that going, the business leaders just grabbed onto it, and then they said, now I need an HR consultant who is skilled at this that can help make it happen. But the business leader was now the driver, and so it spurred the whole system. And I must say, even now, and I've been out of Procter & Gamble for 20 years, and I've had feedback as recently as 2 weeks ago that this approach is still alive and well, and mainly because line managers as well as HR managers have a tool that they have found has been able to help them. So that's what we're going to take you through now. And this is the latest version. We've done it, but even Jay Galbraith would recognize his work in this model. So if you and I went to your business partner, your business leader, and the leader started to describe for us the problem that they wanted help with, they would start to describe what they saw that caused the problem. And that's like the 16 squares. They're in front of them, they can see, they have an opinion, they evaluate what's going well, not going well with the squares. All right. But it could be, especially for real serious or perpetual problem, that square 30 is the one that's causing the problem. And a few minutes ago, we didn't see square 30. And you cannot solve what you cannot see. And notice, square 30 is made up of 9 other squares. The diagnosis is an essential part of the design process. You've got to know what you've got, what's going on and what needs to be corrected, and where it might be wasted energy. Because if we decided, for whatever reason, that this is the square we're going to attack, it would have no impact on the problem that we've been asked to solve. And we'll be disappointed, and it'll still be there, and we'll be back again in 3 months' time with the same business leader, same frustrations, not going anywhere. The whole notion is that much of what we are doing is being evaluated by voters who do have a choice. They can vote for us or they can vote for someone else. Okay? And I will say right now, if you can identify the most critical stakeholder needs that your business has, and if you meet those needs better than anyone else, you will have all the business you want. It's when we stop fulfilling those stakeholder needs that we notice sales are down, employee turnover is rising, whatever it might be. Those are all indicators that the stakeholder needs are not being met as well as they need to be. My rule of thumb for any box in this model, when we're actually doing it, I limit it to no more than 10 items. So what are the 10 most critical stakeholder needs? if you meet these needs, this was one of our group vice presidents said this, I liked it. If we meet these needs and none others, we will still grow. If we meet a lot of other needs and leave out any of these, we will fail. And to me, that's a very good positioning on the few items that need to go in that box. This is ideal. This is, you know, I see it a lot, but this is the reality. Okay, so now, there are conflicts. Conflicts between the two, which one wins? Reality always wins. So what sets the direction for people as they do their work? The strategy or the real life? And that's our blind spot. People have something in their heads that is different than what the strategy is, and that sets the direction for their work. Okay? Huge blind spot. One of the things that we'll find this afternoon as we go through the diagnosis process helps us identify what is in people's heads that might be driving their efforts that are contradictory to our strategy. And once we understand what those are, then we can start to do something about it. It's that square that if you can't see it, you can't do anything about it. Now we've got 4 systems that we call the tools to bring the strategy to life. In the Galbraith model, of course, we've got the STAR model with 5 or 6 elements in there, and Jay has evolved that through the years as well. But basically, these systems, however we define them and break them out, these are the tools that we use to bring the strategy to life. That's what they should be doing, okay? So we have organizational systems, we have performance systems, we have people systems, we have information systems. So here's our lesson on culture. It's the witness here is talking. And the witness says, so once they started talking, I just remained motionless, taking in every word. Of course, it was just pure luck. I happened to be a fly on the wall. Right? So if you want to describe the culture that's driving the results, you look through the eyes of the fly on the wall and you describe the behaviors that you see happening. Okay? Now, in your book, Craig, you've already got it. Look at the behaviors, and then, as Nadia said, those behaviors do drive our results. So we're understanding now there is a logic in the organization that produces certain results, and that's why we're perfectly designed to get those results and not other results. Good results as well as bad results. They all have a very logical explanation in the system.
Okay, now, if this is a product and this were an assembly line, how long would it take to get that product around the assembly line and out to production? Go.
Where'd that come from? Ah, wait a minute.
Okay, stop.
Oh.
Just screwed up, guys. Just screwed up.
Well, you had, I think you had about either, I couldn't, you had about 8 damaged products, and it took you about 26 seconds.
To finish them all.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we had a backlog on the final roller as it goes, unfortunately.
I have 3 things at once.
Yeah. Well, here, I'll take one of them off your hands.
The assembly line kind of jammed up right there. Okay, now, do you think you can do better?
Sure.
Yeah?
Always can do better.
So what's the
It
problem?
was 8 damaged products.
You had
You
8
have to be
damaged
26 seconds.
products.
Yeah.
It took you 26
It's that egg,
seconds.
It's hard to...
Mhm.
About every 3 seconds, we're ruining something.
Oh, every 3 seconds you're ruining the product, and you only have 6 products, and you damaged 8. That's...
It really wasn't the same product. When it's damaged, we've got a new one. If you
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah, you have
Assembly
to
line,
imagine.
You just go through.
Would you like a moment to discuss your production problems? No? Okay, start.
Really?
We have to throw it though.
Okay.
Oh, that thing is so little.
Okay, stop. Well, we had different problems.
Craig, you're the problem, I can tell this.
Okay, this time it took you 46 seconds.
And how many drops?
Well, you had fewer drops. You had about 5 drops. There were kind of some critical drops. Machines really went down on this one. Okay, now, would you like a few seconds or a minute to discuss your production?
We should establish some rules. The one thing is that the sequence, I think, makes it very difficult. Huh?
Yes.
So that we have not a logical line and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I think the other thing is that I think if you have eye contact, then it works.
Yeah.
If you don't have eye contact, then it becomes quite difficult.
We can just go in
That's-
order and hand it.
It's not that easy because we're not
Yeah.
allowed to have 2 things in
Yeah,
our
yeah,
hands, so
yeah.
I can look at her or at him.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah. But not
True. I think
otherwise.
it's easy because I get it here to the hand and I just focus on it.
Yeah, I tend to watch you and then just throw it in.
Yeah.
Do we have to throw it? Was that one of the rules?
That was not a rule.
Oh,
Why don't
perfect.
we just go in order and then?
just not.
Okay, do we have to pass it in the original order?
You have to pass it in the original
Okay, so
order.
we can't
Because-
change that order. In
But
other
can
words,
we try?
I've always got to throw to
No.
Christian, or I have to give to Christian and receive from Wolfram.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
We can move closer together,
closer
sure.
together.
Are we
then-
allowed to change our position?
No,
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 can't change the
that
position.
you're not allowed to
Can't
do.
take the position.
But we can hand rather than throw.
Yeah, that is.
Because I gotta tell you, there are some times where I'm doing just fine here and all of a sudden the thing coming to me is just not on my radar screen until it hits me in the face. Or thank goodness the balloon comes softly. This could do some damage. So,
But, can we do it like this? 1, 2, so it's a direct line up?
oh,
Because it's a little bit tricky to have
yes,
this
so we
complex.
have
So
different
maybe you start-
levels. So this is my chain, is you two. All right, how would we do it?
Is this writing necessary? Is this?
That
You go to me here.
was what you
This is like,
No.
Now we have 2.
this is like Twister.
Yeah.
Okay, wait, are you practicing now?
Well, I don't know.
But
Okay.
handing it over and coming closer together would make it.
Should make it easier.
Should make it easier.
I don't know if the up and down is going to work. Julie. That's a good thought. I'm not quite sure though.
Maybe just creates complexity.
So who do you receive from?
Okay, not yet.
Okay, so let's assume that the two of you were at a lower level, and then who do you pass it along to?
To Greg.
So if the 3 of you were low and the 3 of us were high, how would that work? Let's try that slowly, very slowly. Go
Okay,
down high, we'll go up higher.
now, wait, I'm gonna do the start.
Okay, all right, we'll try it.
Start.
All right, okay, go. Oh! The balloon's hard to grab with one hand. Oh, sorry. That's scream.
Accidents.
Okay.
Okay, stop.
Okay, what do you think? Is that working better?
Yeah.
It's simplifying for me.
Okay, we're gonna start again. Start.
All right, okay, just a second. All right, are we ready? Okay, everybody
Yes,
ready?
thank you. Start.
You don't like the egg, huh?
Okay, I've gotta concentrate there.
in 28 seconds. So instead of doing one round in 28 seconds and dropping about 8 things, you did 3 rounds and dropped 2 things. Now-
We should divest in this product because it's always.
And the balloons. The balloons are too,
When-
actually.
When you're throwing that, the balloon is a killer.
So
Everything else is fast as balloon.
do you think you can do better?
Oh yeah, we're just getting the hang of it now.
Okay? Would you like 30 seconds to discuss it?
Are the 3 of you okay down below? We're doing okay if I can just keep track of that one guy.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah. No, I think we're doing okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it's how we end this off, maybe we should end it like, or something, or something.
We have to give it.
I just, yeah.
I think you have to decide which one you give down, the other.
Okay.
It's possible to open it and put this inside.
No, don't damage it now.
I don't know if it'll close again.
Yeah, it's
Literally,
there are some, it has a fear to.
I just have to not get tangled up in the ribbon.
Well, you know, yeah, life is difficult and not
Life is difficult.
all the pieces are. Okay,
All right.
are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, start.
Hey, we're ready for the soup factory now. Oh shoot, that was my fault. That's string.
Okay, stop. You've got about 5 rounds in 36 seconds. Now, and actually, our next round, we're going to see how many rounds we can do in a minute. But the string is problem, correct?
Yeah, it is.
Well, I don't know if you noticed, but the weights are in new one, so the weights are, I started my hand, this is good.
Well,
That was working, I started dropping the egg that time the first time. So it's like, it's all on the script.
no.
I would cut it up.
I keep getting tangled up.
Well,
into
now,
this.
you can't cut it off, but,
You guys look just
In the palm, not
Yeah.
with the fingers close together, not spread out to tangle up.
we visited a company that instituted a system of employees giving feedback, solving problems. And first year, they had 35 problems. Third year, they had 35,000 suggestions implemented. That was massive. 35,000 suggestions implemented. So I'll give you 30 seconds to figure out a suggestion to implement.
I'm gonna start capturing it like this.
We can use the tape and just fix this to the tape. And then,
That's not a rule, so I guess you can.
We'll modify the egg.
it seems to
You
be not
couldn't cut it off because it's part of the egg.
Yeah, but it can make the transport a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And they have, by using this formula, cut their production time down from 28 days to 3 hours. The slow company. Now, the farm business, that's pretty hard. You have regulations, but. Okay, here we go, here we go.
All right.
Okay, any more discussion? No?
No.
Okay. Start.
minute only has 60 seconds, Charlie. Are we together on
10
that?
minutes later.
People can hold their breath for this long.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, good. We recovered.
Stop.
Cool.
You got it around 9 times, and as far as I can tell, you didn't
We didn't
damage anything.
No, never happened.
I had a balloon in my face.
Luckily, it was a balloon.
Okay, that's enough
Yeah.
time on this.
Sure, yeah.
That's a lot of progress. From one time, 8 damages out of these pieces. And, you know, almost a half a minute to get it around once. So you got around 9 times. Now, if we worked on this more, you could probably get it around 20 to 30 times in a minute. If we spend all day on this. See?
Let's try that.
Boy, that legs would just be screaming, wouldn't they? Yeah, there's, you know, as where Schultz says, we've got a lot of room for improvement.
I think it's often the case that you have specific rules defined, and in your underlying assumptions you do not do things because you think there are also rules against it. So this is many of these exercises. You just have to rethink it, and then you think, okay, there are only these few rules, so I can change whatever I want to the other areas. So this is, I think, often the case. Also in reality then.
Oh, will they ever finish a reorganization themselves? And I think no, it will take some more time. What they did so far is they became a global organization 1.5 years ago. And with the new L1, they started several initiatives to become business partners for their clients. So before this global reorganization, they acted locally and did purchasing, well, let's call it services. And they tried to become business partners with several initiatives, like one is called Courageous Leadership. So they defined their vision, they defined their strategy, and they defined behaviors that would work for them on their way to become business partners. And at the moment they are at the point that they say, okay, what skills do the people need to be able to act like business partners? And that's a big project called GROW, which starts in April and hopefully will end in August. And my plan is to integrate some aspects of this OSM from the skills project, because at the moment I'm this guy on the wall looking at the culture, and I know that the L1 uses a model which doesn't have this cultural part. And I work with 2 other change agents, one internally in the organization and the HR business partner. And we all think this might be a good possibility or opportunity to have the bottom-up look and to add some cultural aspects to the strategy they have so far. So I think maybe with a performance rating, or there are some tools I could use within the skills project to aggregate some topics and to differentiate some topics, like what are we really talking about, skills or the information system, for example. The process is clear. They have different topics you could have another look on. So this is a plan to bring some topics bottom up.
Okay. And by looking at the culture, some things will probably surface in the plan that wouldn't surface otherwise, is my guess.
I think so too.
Okay? All right. What questions or issues do you have that we might be able to help with some work here?
Well, my question is how to integrate two different models or concepts. Because what we've done so far is to do the diagnosis, then to design the organization model, and that's what they have done already. So my question would be how to integrate a cultural part to some initiatives that are already alive.
Okay. So let me capture these as we get going here.
Oh, I moved everything.
So let's do issues, questions. And your question, Julia, is how to integrate cultural issues into other frameworks. Okay? Okay.
And maybe how to use the OSM to check an ongoing initiative. Because they define the vision and strategy and so on, and it is lasting more than 1.5 years now. So maybe we could do a check in between.
Okay. Very good. So, how to integrate culture issues into other frameworks and using the OSM to monitor ongoing initiatives. It's already going, they've got it rolling. Can we use this to monitor how we're doing and what we might need to adjust or something? Okay? Very good.
I would have a question. Knowing the main actors there, and you mentioned that that people are already asking how long does it take until we are finally organized in a way that we can work, because I know that this is going on since 2007 now, I think. Already Heribert Eckert, the predecessor, already did quite some work. So how to really, get a final hook using maybe the methodology in order to check what has been done, not only what's ongoing, so that you really can say, okay, that's it now. Because I do question a little bit the methodologies which are behind when you have an ongoing, constant, changing structure, organization, process thing in place. And I know a little bit about the background, so I always get confused and think, okay, it's not as big as an organization. And at one point in time, I really think they should be ready.
I totally agree. I wondered whether this is kind of a change virus, because they are missing the big picture, because they have so much history now with so many projects, and my feeling at the moment is that the employees didn't get the big picture of their new L1, because they go from one project to the other.
I think maybe you are back to square one and should do an organizational diagnosis instead of doing the design. Really look at it, where are we now, what has happened, and really what is now the case, where are we now, in order to set up from there again.
And that's the interesting point, I think, because when you look at the different initiatives they already have, they worked on some parts of the OSM. So my feeling is they shouldn't start from the beginning, because they work on vision, strategy, and so on for a year now. But I don't know, they don't succeed that fast. And the question is why? And my guess is because of the culture, because of the history and the culture, and they don't focus on the culture yet.
which would be then a very probable outcome of the diagnosis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I mean, this is, these are some good issues. We can certainly have some very good discussion and talk about some different approaches to do this, to catch them in the, politically, you probably could say, well, we need to start all over again. That would not go over well. But on the other hand, you can do some things which will cause them to look at stuff that they have overlooked and plug it in now, and it's not starting over, it is diagnosing where are we now and what do we need to do to move things forward. Because if it's been 5 years and we're still not sure what it is, that's a rather lengthy period to be in limbo. So, okay. All right. Here's my little machine telling me you haven't checked in with me lately. Okay. Very good. Anything else? Any other questions come to mind about Julia's project? This is not unusual, by the way. A lot of efforts get started, and frankly, people get bogged down, and they don't know what to do to get it unstuck. They don't know what to do to get it rolling again, and so this happens a lot. Okay, so who would like to go next?
I can do. So
Okay, Wolfram?
I started to apply the OSM on a topic that is really close to my heart, as we don't have a real answer. We have the corporate organizational development function, so that is myself, and we have OD people in the countries, but we have no solution to what happens if we have an OD project of a bigger scope, and how do we do resource allocation. And I found it, first of all, for me quite useful to fill in that organizational diagnosis. And then what didn't work is with the colleagues that should be on board with that, to bring them all together in one room. So that is one of the first hurdles if you want, with that corporate team and with some stakeholders in the KG. If you want to have half a day of a meeting, it doesn't work. So they say, okay, our diaries are full, so we get at least 1 hour or so on. And then I decided to say, okay, now I took my incomplete diagnosis and then had individual sessions. And it was extremely interesting to see how many additional aspects showed up that I didn't have in my original diagnosis. And so that was the interesting part, that we were able to have a relatively broad diagnosis. What I found difficult is I saw a certain need to narrow that down, because it's a lot of things that are currently in there, and Christian, you also gave your input to that. Mm-hmm. So one thing is the risk to then in that diagnosis also having other topics in there to say, okay, this is not really the key issue with him there. So we have the resource allocation was the question I was asked by my board member to say, work on that. And by working on that, for example, the issue on what kind of activities on OD are the global HR business partners rewarded or not was a side topic, that how on the one hand to work on it or not to work on it. So okay, we detect somehow a topic that is also quite interesting. So in the reward structures for people who say yes, we should also support these kind of initiatives. So say, okay, we have identified another issue there that's outside my shop. Just to cut it and say, okay, this discussion we do on a different. So I think how to narrow it down to the topic we really want to work on. That was one thing, and the other thing is I found, and maybe it's our culture here. So everybody then said, yeah, okay, that diagnosis more or less it has all the elements in there, but then when trying to go through them the similar methodology for the design, then there was a very clear tendency to say, okay, yeah, it's a wonderful process, but this is the solution we want to go for, or this is something we would like, and to have people in the KG who also can have that global role doesn't work because of. So then it was relatively easy to do with all of them the different aspects of the diagnosis part, but with the same consequence to work through that model in the design part. I felt that was quite difficult because they then had some very clear beloved ideas. They would say, okay, but this would be a nice solution, or that doesn't work, or here we have some restrictions, and that is what I found extremely difficult. So on the one hand showed that this in a one-to-one interaction doesn't work, so you need the team, but I think it was really something to say, okay, how can I put them really into carefully going through that process, and not saying, okay, the diagnosis is clear, but it's obvious that we can go for this, and that's that. So to challenge certain assumptions. So that is why I struggled at the moment and say, the diagnosis brought some additional ideas in there and brought really the perspective, what's going on and why certain things are not working properly. But in the design phase, I got stuck, and then I was sick for some weeks, and we didn't do any meetings in between. Sure, maybe you can also comment on that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We have, as we are working in a very small team overall, in with different responsibilities, but also in a team environment at corporate, we have discussed the whole OD thing already 2010 to a certain extent, and now in a formal way, Wolfram started with the diagnosis, and we both discussed it back and forth. And I do see, in addition to what Wolfram has described, still two things, and Wolfram, you are aware of that. The one thing is that we are really struggling to be ready to do real change management. And this is what we have captured also in your documentation, that people always say, oh, we have to do change management. But when it really comes to the point that we really now have to take the efforts, be it additional resources, be it just time, what have you, we are shying away and say, oh, we can do it, by the way, if we want to set up something properly with regards to communication, or, we'll find some ways how to get it done in a way so that the real commitment to a proper change management approach is not really there when it comes really to the request of additional resources for that. And the other thing is really what I have found out when we discussed Wolfram's project, but also when we discussed about a topic in my area where I did a kind of a diagnosis, how to work together in our now regional and global setup versus the functional setup of our business and functions. There I could also find in mutual conversations you could see that some of the beliefs and underlying assumptions came through, but you will never get it in a bigger round. But the other thing is also that even people are telling about or just tipping on these kind of assumptions, they still continue to behave based on these assumptions and beliefs. And that's where I think is the root cause. These two things that we do not really value, or that some of our colleagues do not value real proper change management and then acknowledge the necessary resources for that. And the other thing is really that people are behaving based on their beliefs and assumptions and do not honestly disclose them or are not even realizing them. And I think we get stuck with a lot of projects from a corporate or global perspective due to these two perspectives. I don't know.
Yeah, and this underlying beliefs and values, that is, they also see the discussion about that maybe really crucial to do it, because we have this nice dilemma that on the one hand, even our customers in a customer survey tell us in HR you need more resources to do your job. On the other hand, we have this underlying belief, if you would build up this OD capacity and there would be no change project, what do we do with all that people? And so it's,
On the other hand, they are preaching, oh, we are in times of frequent and discontinuous change, which will never end. This is the time now, and so therefore, on the other hand, they are asking, oh, what happens if there is no change? Man, can you believe there is no change?
Yeah.
Quite frankly, but for me, the question is really, okay, how to address these kind of beliefs, underlying assumptions on the one hand, and also how to confront in a proper way with these kind of root causes and issues.
Okay. Okay, so let me try and capture, Wolfram, one of the first things you discussed, which is not unique again to you, is how do you get very busy people to come together on some stuff? Yes, you could go interview them individually and all that, but at some point they do have to come together. And the reality is they have a lot of projects, a lot of things, and they're very busy. So let's spend some time on that somewhere here in the 3 days. How to get very busy people to come together. I have a friend who was trying to get us on the agenda of all the major general leaders of the United States defense system, which is looking over the borders of the United States, the security system for the U.S. And he said, some of us have to be on duty all the time. I mean, somebody's got to be in a different slot. And so we were looking at some ways of doing that. We found a way that we could do it. Unfortunately, they decided not to do the project, but we at least, even in that situation, we found a way to get everybody together. Anyway, that's a good one. You also, Wolfram, the underlying values and beliefs, there was the root cause. I want to make sure that we capture that one accurately.
It's like how can we really stimulate a very open discussion about what are the underlying values and beliefs. In a group of, I think in individual discussions, the people will name some of the underlying beliefs, but as soon as we would go into a group and would have the board member, for example, in there to present that, it wouldn't be that easy.
Yeah.
And the other thing is really this, okay, now we did the diagnosis, please make a proposal, or just the people have some ideas and say, okay, then we go for that and that solution. So not being willing to follow through the process, but there must be a proposal, and then we discuss a proposal, but the involvement in investing time in the design process to generate that is difficult.
We'll quickly then back to the facts and don't talk about these kind of underlying values, beliefs, and all the related cultural things, as you can easily see. Just having some kind of pre-discussions and then just details, facts, and get it done.
A quick fix, aspirin. No?
And it was
Sometimes.
how to get to a proposal which is not just a collection of their prejudged solutions or their favorite solutions.
Yeah.
That's based on something factual rather than what they knew they wanted to do before we had any of these discussions. Oops. Okay.
And I noticed that when trying to fill the boxes here, at a certain point in time, you have to stop and say, okay, this is really in terms of strategy and capabilities what the key is, and you can sometimes make this list longer and longer and longer, how to narrow it down to really the 3, 4, 5 key elements. I think we faced in the case studies where last time also that our lists were we had a tendency to get that list longer and longer,
right.
And how to bring it down to the essential and say, okay, these are the key elements, and that would also make it easier to test against these things and say, okay, does it really fulfill the requirements what we want to do? There is a tendency, I felt, okay, now now the text is outside the boxes already, so there may be too many things in there. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, ideas don't constrain themselves to our boxes.
No, but
Yeah, they keep coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right, okay. And Christian, was there something else that you mentioned that I didn't capture here?
I think for once more how to really grow the understanding about the importance of change management.
Yes, yeah.
And the commitment to do it in a proper way.
Put that one, turn it off, put it up here.
I'm sorry, my writing's not doing too well today.
Because I think the change management is then the next phase. For example,
All right.
Some of my experiences, I think, are similar to Wolfram's. But let me just start by saying, because it'll lead into that, and we've always required, whenever we've done any type of organizational design work, is some certain steps to go through. I think I talked in our first section about that. Some of it goes back to some of the Galbraith work, but it was very minimal. So we would always require our managers making a proposal. What are your key design principles? What's your organization look like? What will it look like? So it's pretty simplistic. So, but in my experience and what I thought of as Wolfram was saying it, I did apply the model, and I found the diagnosis piece worked really well, and I found that valuable. But when we got to the design step, the leader that I was working with wanted to get right to, okay, that's nice and all, but let's get to key design principles. Because all of our vendors have that in their head.
Okay.
And I think it worked though. I mean, I think it kind of took the best of, you know, what they were used to, and also getting people to think about the diagnosis before getting rid to key design principles. So, so I struggled on the second part. So I think the diagnosis tool worked extremely well. The design piece, I don't know if it was my facilitation of it or the tool itself or just our managers.
Yeah. What was the group and issue that you were working with?
Well, it tended to be, and that's the other thing where, Wolfram talked about getting a group together. Our organization design initiatives tend to come from somebody external telling us your G&A is too high in this area. So that's where they tend to come from. So in the case of Campbell Europe, where I'm working today, we tend to have small, discrete organizations. So I work with our IT function, which is 20 people across Europe. And again, our head of IT for international was, it becomes like a curse word, the Hackett study. Everybody refers to the Hackett study that says, okay, our G&A is too high in IT, we need to. So it was working with the IT group, and his end game, though, and it's similar to what Wolfram was saying, it was, he had one goal in mind, and it was reduce the G&A costs for IT. So that was the project. Yeah, so, and again, so I was one of the ones that commented, I don't know if anybody else did, as Dave mentioned up front, getting my head around is the tool. I can totally get how the whole tool, the OSM model, applies if you're talking about the enterprise level. I wasn't sure if it was my facilitation of it or how it works when you're talking about a smaller subgroup. So if I'm talking about a 20 department IT department, applying the total tool to it.
Okay. So
I was using the tool one-on-one
Yeah.
with a senior leader. And again, I found that worked fine. But if you read the facilitation guide talking about 3 to 4 day workshops with groups of 15 to 20 people, we're just not realistic in the types of initiatives that I would have available today.
Okay. So the question is, how to do design with a small group?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yep. Well, and even the diagnosis. I mean, now I did it with a small group, and I felt that it worked fine. But is the tool designed that way? I mean, I didn't feel any issues with it. I'd be curious if anybody else used it with a small group or a particular one-on-one with a leader. But then the design piece is where I struggled. And I admit I struggled with it a little bit in the first session we did because I understand the process and going through it, but then when you get to the step of, okay, what's the organization going to look like?
Now also, when you were talking, I think if you do these, if you work in a corporation, some things you just can't change, around systems. That's probably also an interesting question. How can we still, especially if we work on smaller projects, How
Yeah.
can we still apply this while we, I'm not just saying something, probably can't change the performance management system, even if the performance management system is not in line with what we actually propose on the design work.
So that's another question. What can you do when some systems are fixed and beyond your control to change? Okay, very good. These are great issues. This is why the first 3 days we got the basics in, and now you go back and use it in the real world and these kinds of questions. And that's why I purposely leave the agenda for the second round fairly open. I've got stuff here, but we'll address, these are the real issues, and these are the things we need, and a lot of them are focusing more on the design side than the diagnosis side, which is taking us deeper into it, which is fine. So, okay. So the question here was, how do you change, how do you redesign when some systems are fixed, right?
And that again is where I think, if I think about the IT organization using the diagnosis tool where it worked well, because where we're being told, okay, your G&A costs in IT are too high, when we got the diagnosis tool, we go through it and we see valid reasons for it. For example, we have very fragmented systems. We're not probably like a P&G operating an SAP across Europe. We have very fragmented systems within countries. So I think that's where the diagnosis tool really does work, getting at that as well. Not trying to explain away issues, but I think as you get to it, you start looking at systems, you say, well, we have very fragmented systems, and if we're benchmarking against a P&G or a big company, we don't have those kind of tools.
Right. Okay. All right. Any other questions that Craig's report brings up? And so in the process, you are where with IT?
We're done. But
Okay.
I wouldn't say we followed the full process.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this issue of design principles. Should we address that here? How do you address design principles in the process of design?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's kind of in our culture, so we're used to doing that. We're used to jumping right to it, though, as the first step. So again, that's why I said I think it worked, at least having, taking what our managers are culturally used to, and then adding the diagnosis piece up front to it. But they're used to that as a first step. Say, okay, I need to redesign the organization. What are my just key design principles?
Yeah.